Eric, it looks like everyone's here, so it's 8 o'clock and we're ready to get started.
Yes.
Okay. So President Rickard is somewhere in Italy this morning. So as Vice President, I'm stepping in to manage the meeting this morning. So I'll call the meeting to order and ask Peter if you can do the roll call.
You're muted, Peter.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah, now we can. Yes,
okay.
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Yes, Rickert, absent. Epstein?
Present.
Schroeder?
Present.
Perot? Not here yet. And Dornberg here.
So
Bertrand is here, but he was muted.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I say it again. Present.
Oh, okay, 4 out of 5.
All right, we have a quorum. Eric, are there any announcements for today's meeting?
Just like to welcome everyone to our regularly scheduled board meeting. All votes will be taken via roll call.
Okay, great. And then what's item 4, corrections to the consent calendar or agenda?
Yes, staff would recommend that item 7, 9AI, 9AII, and 9AIV, and 9I and 9M be eliminated from the agenda, as well as moving item 9K to the beginning of the agenda, since our consultants are present from Jones Hall and Stiefel.
Can you actually show the item in the agenda, because the page is not showing that, so I have no idea what was.
Oh, did you not get a copy of the agenda, Bertrand?
I have it on the screen. I have one computer, not two.
So 9AI and II.
So July financials and August preliminaries.
And budget variance tracking.
Okay.
And then performance reporting aquifer levels. USDA letter of conditions should be eliminated, and item K should be moved to the beginning of the agenda.
Okay. And on the adoption,
item 7 as well.
All of item 7.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other corrections to the agenda? Okay. Great. Eric, do we need to vote on the changes or just proceed?
Yes. A motion to make the changes would be appreciated.
Okay.
Dornberg, so moved.
Okay. Epstein seconds. Peter?
Yes. Rickert, absent. Epstein?
Aye.
Schroeder?
Aye.
Perot?
Aye.
Dornberg, aye.
Okay. So with that done, we'll move on to item 5. Are there comments from the audience? An opportunity for anyone to comment on something that is not on the agenda. So Peter, is anyone? So for the purpose of the meeting, you can use your raise your hand button on the reactions tab. Peter, do we have any?
Yes, I do have one.
Okay.
One moment. Okay. A. Karlovac.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi. Hi, everyone. So I'm a homeowner in Edelweiss. And by the way, I'm somewhat relieved that Kirkwood is still standing after these last couple of weeks. And I wanted to comment on the electrical rate, which I know is not on today's agenda, but I gather these comments, this comments period is specifically for stuff that might not be on the agenda. Since it was announced and the sort of various changes, I've been trying to get the issue escalated because in my case, the new proposed rate, the base rate, means that I'll be paying 35% more over the course of the year. which is a fair bit of money. And the reason for this is that the way the logic is worded, it completely excludes my family's actual usage in the calculations, and instead relies exclusively on the previous owner's very wasteful electrical usage. And this is despite us having owned our place for almost 2 years at this point, since October 2019. And just the background, which is why this is such a big issue for me, is that the prior owner's usage was very inefficient. They didn't really implement any sensible approaches to reduce electrical usage, which we did. And they were selling their unit in part because of the very high electrical costs. They weren't really using it. The rentals that the rental income barely covered the cost of those bills. And for a homeowner in my situation, there basically doesn't seem to be any way to resolve this. If the purpose of the new rate was to increase everybody's bill, that would be a different situation. But in my case, it's a very significant increase, and there seems to be no way for me to go about resolving it and proving that a different amount would actually be much more reasonable. For example, using my actual usage in calculating the new base rate, which would be representative of future usage. So I wanted to bring this up to the board and hopefully see if there is some way to resolve this in the future.
Okay, thank you for bringing it up. Next comment?
Carolyn Scott was next.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Carolyn, welcome.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone who was involved in the last few weeks for, I'm sure, a lot of overtime and effort and stress in saving our valley. I watched everything everyone was doing constantly over the last 3 weeks, and I'm just thrilled that you managed to save our places. So thank you very much, Rick, and anyone else, the staff, whoever was involved.
Thank you for that comment, Carolyn. We all feel that way.
Supervisor Woodrow, I think, is next.
Yes, I wasn't sure. I didn't get on the call early enough. I didn't know if Chief Hughes was going to report now and to give an update on the fire, or if he was going to wait until later when you talked under fire prevention.
Chief, did you want to speak now? You need to unmute.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay, just to give you a quick update, it's really an update on the evacuation for you to understand how that happened and where we are with it as of today. The command post will send out an evacuation notice to the different counties or different areas. There will be a warning. There'll be advisory, a warning, and then a mandatory. The local fire department, sheriff's office really don't have a lot of control over that given program. They'll send it out, and then they'll ask the county sheriff to start their mandatory evacuation. We usually do that by a reverse 911 first, and then we'll send deputies out door to door. That's how that evacuation happens. It's not all underneath the control of the individual county as much as it is the command post. And realize that this command post in this fire, the command post was in Placerville. So kind of an unusual fire that we've not faced in a long time. So then about reoccupying is basically the same thing. We'll go to some evacuation meetings the undersheriff has been there, the sheriff has, and they'll make the determination when to reoccupy a different area. We still have a couple fire engines past the spur on the road, but I haven't seen, as of this morning, engines up to Kirkwood. So we will go to the command post and recommend for them to review that and look about reoccupying Kirkwood itself. There's some snag trees along the road. They have to go in and clean out those trees along the road before they allow people to enter that area. So that's kind of where we're at with the fire and where we're going to do to reoccupy Kirkwood community. So that's just an update of what I have on that. Questions at all about that?
No, thank you for the update. Eric, are there any other comments from the audience?
There are not.
Okay. Having that done, item 6 is written comments from the public, which are in the board packet. I think before, so the consent calendar has been dropped. There's no items moved forward. So before we start with board actions, I want to echo what Carolyn said. This was a tremendous incident that we've all lived through for the last couple of weeks, and the outcome is so positive. And that's just due to the tremendous effort that everybody put on, and the support from the community and from our own firefighters and our own staff. The stress level has been high, and the results are just as good as we could ask for. So I want to also thank everyone on behalf of the board of the work that was put in, and I hope it I hope it will continue to die down and people will get some time off. So thank you all for your efforts. So with that, let's move on to item, it looks like 9. Do we have cash flow? Or
We'll go to 9K, I think is what we moved to the top.
9K, right. There we go.
Good.
Okay. So 9K is a resolution, the board of directors to authorize interim loan financing for the wastewater treatment plant. This would be done to start the work and then would be replaced by a RUS loan at the completion of the work. So Eric?
John, did you want to take the lead on this?
Or John?
Yeah, sure. I'll
it.
summarize. We spoke about this in detail at the last board meeting, so there's some information there. And I think we tried to detail the recommendation, the process we went through to get there. We had a subcommittee of Eric Christensen, Standish O'Grady, and myself. And we worked with our partners, Jones Hall, our bond attorney, and we had selected in the last board meeting Stiefel as our placement agent. And I think we ran a pretty good process, put quite a few RFPs out to, I think, 21 different potential lenders, got multiple bids back. And I think we're happy with making a recommendation today. We're not happy about having to raise more debt for KMPUD, but we're happy with our ability to secure financing for the critical infrastructure of the wastewater treatment plant. So of the proposals we reviewed, we chose CoBank as the lender, and it's a variable rate proposal. It was the lowest cost of funds, about $13,000 less than the next lowest proposal. We were comfortable with a variable rate loan for a couple of reasons. One is it's a short-term loan of just a few years. And from looking at rate analysis, it doesn't seem like there's a big exposure in the time period that we'll be carrying this debt. And the variable rate loans were the only loans that allowed us to do a drawdown over time. So we can basically take down that loan as we need the funds during the duration of the project. So that reduces the amount of money we have to borrow over that period of time. So we're comfortable with that. We did put the loan amount at the estimate for the refurbishing of the wastewater treatment plant. And so we have to be very diligent to not incur unanticipated change orders or cost increases during the project. But I think we're very fortunate. We've got a good track record at PUD on our finances and our loans and our loan repayment. And so we were able to borrow at some incredibly low rates, basically slightly less than 1% annually. So today we've got Jones Hall and Stiefel on this as well, and I'd like them to comment, but pretty much we have the documents ready to execute. The loan is subject to getting the letter of obligation from the USDA RUS. But we'd like to move forward with a resolution to execute those documents. David, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sorry, there I was had to unmute. No, that was a good presentation, and we work with CoBank a lot. They're very dependable in terms of carrying out what they say, and nothing you're doing here is out of the box at all. We do a lot of these loans, precursors to the USDA financing, and you're in line with what we typically see, and it's good that you can enjoy these low interest rates. So nothing to add, but I'm available for any questions, as is my partner, James.
David, I think we had one change on section 3. We need to add the assistant general manager.
Yeah, the bank, CoBank has kind of an unusual requirement that they added, and that is that the title of the officer signing the actual documents is included in the resolution. So in the resolution that we submitted originally, we just had general manager, vice president, president. We'd like to add assistant general manager. I think that Eric's availability might be limited in the coming days, and it might butt up against when we're trying to get the actual signatures. So if we can add assistant general managers to assistant general manager just to cover our basis there, that would be great. I submitted to Eric a resolution that includes that wording if the board accepts it.
All right, and then James, do you have any comment you want to make?
No, but I know Eric McKean at Stiefel on the numbers side may have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
was looking
Give him
for.
a chance. We don't need 2 lawyers.
Well, good morning, everyone. I would just add, I think, so we've been working very closely with Eric and John, and both of them have been working hard through this process to help us get here. I think, CoBank has been a very good counterparty to work with. We've gone through all their documentation, and it is very straightforward documentation. And they've even been helpful with working with USDA, and that process is ongoing. That's not done yet, but it's all progressing on schedule. So we're very happy so far, and we were very happy with the bids that the district got. It is a very attractive cost of funds. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have this morning too, but it's been a great process working with the team.
Yeah, and I have to second that. I think our partners at Jones Hall and Stiefel, and also Eric Christensen's work made this a really very smooth process so far. So thanks for your help on that.
Sure.
Okay, so if that completes the presentation, are there any questions from the board on the proposal? And then let me open up to the community. Are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah, actually, can you summarize actually, so what the rate is going to be, since it's going to be variable? What window that you are looking for here?
Yeah, so the term of the loan is outstanding all the way to 2025. We structured the loan to go out that long. We're not anticipating it to be that outstanding for that period of time. Actually, the drawdown schedule is only 2 years. And then this project should be completed, and then the long-term Russ loan will come into place, and that will be a fixed rate loan with USDA. The way the variable rate structure works, currently it's based off of 1 month LIBOR plus a spread of 90 basis points. So right now, that comes out to just below 1% currently. And so it will vary over time. Interest is paid quarterly, but that LIBOR rate, resets. But currently, short-term rates are pretty well anchored. It's hard to predict exactly where they're going to go over this period of time, but we don't foresee over the next 2 years there to be dramatic increases in that short-term rate.
Okay, are there any other questions from the audience or board?
I don't see any hands, Bob.
Okay, then someone will make a motion to approve resolution 21-10
As amended.
as amended to include the assistant general manager.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Dornbrook, second.
Okay, Peter, do you want to
Sure.
ask for votes?
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickert absent.
Okay, so it passes. I want to thank the people from Stifel and Jones Hall for really just a great effort put in and a really wonderful outcome. So we look forward to continuing to work with both firms. And John, thanks a lot for taking the lead on this. Really appreciate all of your efforts.
Very good. Thanks.
Okay, so that completes item K. And we next go to item 9B.
9A3.
9A3.
And that Kelly's going to share her screen, I think.
Okay.
You're muted, Kel.
Yep.
Here we go.
Okay, let's do this. Screen. And I want to share. Sorry.
See, if we see a picture of Willie, we know you did it wrong.
There it is. That's what I want to share. Okay. Sorry for not being able to get financials, all the financials out. I was able to complete the cash flow yesterday afternoon after billing was completed. Really the main thing that I want to point out on the cash flow is our Russ loan A8-17 is due to either be rolled over or paid off. And you can see in this cash flow that this principal amount includes that loan. It's $583,000 right about, which is why that principal amount is so much higher. With this cash flow, you can see that even with paying off that loan, we're still at $1.6 million in total operating cash for the month of September. I would recommend that we go ahead and pay that off. And since we have the cash available, and you can see that, our cash recovers through the end of the year, and not at any point are we below our target budget amount. So that's really that was really the reason for me trying to get the cash flow done, is so that the board could make the decision on whether they would like to either pay off that loan or roll it over.
And let me add that the finance committee discussed this and recommends paying off the loan.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be our second one that we've paid off. So.
Right. Are there any questions from the board? and cash flow?
Yes, I'd like to understand better this option of rollover versus paying off. So if I understand correctly, our Ross loan is actually made of multiple small loans, and the duration of this whole thing is 35 years at the beginning. So I don't know how many years we are still going on, but it's the process of repaying this loan is by repaying off these small blocks. So can you explain a bit better so I can understand at least?
It sounds like you understand it perfectly, Bertrand. That is exactly it. We have several different draws that we've made from our, it was a total, came out to about $63 million, which consisted of A8, B8, and a C8 loan. All of those loans are, they were made in a drawdown situation. So as we needed the funding, the loans were then taken out in small chunks from the whole of the loan. And as these loans come due, we have the option of either paying off the loan at the maturity date, or we can choose to roll the loan over and, you know, extend the maturity date. But as we've discussed in the past, our goal with the new electric fund, the new pricing or billing rates that we've ensued, we're trying to not roll these loans over and actually get them paid off so that we can lower our base rates. And so that's really the gist of it. Is the whole point of changing our base rate structure was so that we could pay off these loans and eventually lower the base rate.
So, so that's why you lost me. So I understand the fact that we basically pay off the small block so we can over the year eliminate our debt, and that's I'm comfortable and understand that. So now you are talking about lowering the debt rate. So to me, what I understand is the interest rate we pay will go down. So that's why I'm not understanding. Can you describe a bit more?
Bob, I don't know, do you?
Well, the interest rate doesn't go down, but our total debt service drops.
So it's not debt rate, it's debt service.
Yeah, the total debt service has been steadily dropping over time. Paying off these chunks makes it drop faster. The large percentage of this is in a fixed term 35-year. But when we put the original ladder together, we anticipated that we would have some accumulation of cash. And so we set up some shorter term debt. So if we did have the opportunity, we could pay it off. And this is one of those pieces. So all of it contributes to reducing the debt service, which then allows us to lower the fixed rate over time.
Well, that's why I'm lost again. Why would that allow to reduce the fixed rate?
Because the fixed rate is a function of what our debt service is. And so as our debt service drops, then we have a smaller fixed rate to pay for, and we can lower that fixed rate if the board so chooses.
Okay, so I'm talking about rate, not amount. So if you do talk about rate, what is our current rate as of today?
If you took an aggregate of all of the debt, it's a little under 3%.
Okay, so and you
but
said
it's an amortizing loan, so we're also paying off principal on a monthly basis.
Okay. One of my concern in this process is we basically got this funding for 35 years, and I see no value in, except if there is a difference in interest rate. That's what I'm trying to understand, in paying faster, because it actually put more burden on the current homeowner instead of trying to spread this whole infrastructure investment on a longer period, so future users would also pay their share on this investment. So I'm totally, I think we need to follow the schedule. I don't think we should speed up the schedule, and that's why I'm uneasy.
We're not speeding up the schedule. This is the schedule for this loan to be paid off at this time. This is what the schedule is for this loan. We have the ability to roll it over if we would like to, but this is the schedule for this loan. This is the maturity date for this loan that's coming due. We're not speeding up the schedule. This is paying on schedule.
So that means that, so I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there other questions?
Well, it also helps us if you look at the WWPP financing we got, paying these loans off on schedule improves our status as a borrower.
Absolutely, I'm totally in support on paying things on schedule.
Okay.
I just don't want to speed up the process. That's basically what I'm saying.
Okay, understood. And we're not speeding it up. We're following the plan. Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions? Okay, so Eric, would you?
Bob, Carolyn has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carolyn. Please unmute and go ahead.
So over the last few weeks, we've spent a lot of money running our own generators, and we've got nobody buying utilities. Do we think that's do we have any idea how that's going to affect our bottom line and our cash flow?
Actually, we did have people buying utilities. Our electric for the month of August was over plan. So, and that's due to the resort running their snowmaking machines and things like that. So I apologize for not having those numbers for this board meeting, but I did complete billing, and electric was over plan for the month of August.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Carolyn, we do budget some amount of diesel use during the course of the year. And there's also an opportunity because of the emergency situation to possibly get a refund on that we'll pursue if that's possible. But financially, financially, I hate to say this, August was an okay month.
Yeah. And the diesel that we use, we've already paid for. It's old diesel that's been in the generators, or that's been in the tanks for quite a long time.
Okay, but I remember that some years when we've had interruptions like this, it throws our budget off, and
sure.
I was just curious if you're considering that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. Thanks for the question.
Well, actually, I'd like to add, it really put the concept of electrical storage in focus, since burning diesel fuel is not actually helping for fighting the climate change. And so I really think we need to plan for, I don't know if it's what the time period is going to be, 2, 5, or 10 years, but we definitively need to plan for electrical storage so we can have electricity on tap without having to burn fuel.
I I totally agree, and I look forward to the day when that all pencils out and we can do it. Okay, so can we have a resolution to approve paying off the loan as described? Don't everyone speak at once.
What's the resolution number?
The resolution is to formally pay off, I forgot the name of this particular loan.
It's the
motion, Bob.
88-17.
It's
So
just a
moved,
motion, not a
Dornbrook.
resolution.
I'm sorry, motion. Sorry. Thank you, Eric. I'm sorry. So Peter, did you move?
Yes, I did.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, John seconds. Peter, can you do roll call?
Sure. Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickard absent.
Okay, so it passes and that completes the cash flow. So Eric, we'll move on to item 9B. And Kelly, I think you're taking the lead on this?
Yes.
Okay.
9B. Eric, will you reshare the?
Yes, I gotta find it again. Hold on.
Okay. While you're looking, these next two items are procedural. They're requests by part of our auditors to formalize policies that we've been following.
So item 9B, a month-end closing policy, basically during last audit, not the current audit, you can see that the auditors recommended to formalize our month-end closing process. And so this month-end closing policy is just to memorialize our current processes. And so I prepared policy statement number 485 to memorialize that, and would ask the board to make a motion to approve that.
Okay, are there any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve policy 485?
Yeah, Dornbrook, I move to approve policy statement number 485.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Bertrand seconds. Okay, roll call.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickert absent.
Okay, that passes. Let's move on to item 9C then, Kelly.
So item 9C, again, these were recommendations from the auditors last audit. And so we just amended our current work order closing policy to add some more specific details and checks that were recommended by the auditors. So we already had a work order closing policy, and I amended the policy statement number 370 to include the recommendations of the auditors.
Okay, are there any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So is there a motion to approve the amendment to policy 370?
Yes, Dornbrook, so moved.
Okay, a second.
I mean,
Okay.
I second. Yeah.
Okay, Bertrand seconds, good.
Epstein.
Roll call, Peter. Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickert absent.
Okay, that passes. We'll move on to item 9D, electric to solid waste interfund loan. Kelly, it's yours also?
Sure. So
Okay.
this is our process that we have to go through when the funds that can't be that can't take property tax revenues due to the type of fund they are. There has to be a loan established from one fund to another to cover the cash losses in that fund. So this loan is from the electric fund to the solid waste fund in the amount of $42,585. And with the paying that loan back by December 31st of 2029.
And the only thing I would
Okay.
note is this is actually going to be resolution 21-11. 2110 was the financing resolution. So
Oh, sorry about that.
that's okay. That's what happened. Both of us write resolutions at the same time.
Well, at least you're resolved to get it done.
And you got it right down here, Kel.
Oh. I just didn't change it in the top portion. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, are there any questions about the loan or the process? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve resolution 2111?
Motion to approve.
Okay, John moves. A second?
I'm sorry, I was mute again somehow. I wanted to two questions.
Okay, please go ahead.
The first question was, can you briefly summarize what's the restriction on the tax allocation and why it cannot be used on specific KMPUD department?
Eric, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, the law only allows us to use property taxes on enterprise funds Currently, solid waste is an optional service. And if it were to become an enterprise fund, which is what the board's looking at later this year, then it could take property tax. But at this time, it is not allowed to take property tax.
Okay, so that's a clear answer. Thank you very much. And it actually put in light the fact that we probably should move on this topic. Then the second question is, so we just raised the rate for the solid waste. Why do we are we still short of 43K?
Because everybody came and sheltered in place at Kirkwood at their second homes.
Okay, so basically we had much more bin tips, like you said,
Yes.
than anticipated due to residency. Can you tell us how, on percentage, how much more bin tip did we got compared to the expectation or the plan?
I don't have those numbers in front of me.
I mean, is that 20%, 50%? Just gross?
I don't have those numbers in front of me. I'm sorry. I can circle back with you and give you that number.
Yeah, that'd be cool, because actually this is a good marker to try to estimate the increased occupancy and this is one marker. There are others. So day water use would be another one.
Right.
And therefore, I think we need to have a better sense of that. I think and I think I asked that a few months ago, that for each meeting we have some kind of I know we don't have the financial today, but because of the evacuation, but I think it would be a very good marker. I mean, set up a few markers like that would be useful to understand the occupancy situation in the valley, since it impacts our bottom line significantly. So that's be one thing I'd like at some point to formalize. I'm getting a bit off topic versus that specific request for the loan. Bob, I'm done.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions? Okay, so is there a motion to approve 2111? I think there was a motion made. Is that we need a second?
Dornbrook, I'll second that.
Okay, so John made the motion, Peter second. Can we do the roll call?
Sure. Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Burrow,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickard absent.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to item 9E, property tax revenue allocations.
So you can see that what the proposed property tax allocations are. You can also see that snow removal paid back $50,000 of their loan from electric. And then you can also see the new loan from solid waste, or to solid waste from electric as well. These numbers were, a portion of these numbers were an estimate from what we expected from Alpine County. I did receive the final apportionment check from Alpine County, and it was only off by $245. So there'll be additional $245 going to the water department. Add $245 to that $2,100 for water. But these are the proposed property tax allocations, and I would ask that the board make a motion to approve these.
Okay, are there questions about the allocation? Anybody?
Well, it's not a question about the allocation, it's a question about the tax, property tax we receive. I don't know, maybe that's something that we need to discuss at a different time, but my question would be, since there was so much property change, and typically tax revenue increase with property change because of the increase of property values, why do we don't see a higher increase in our tax revenue from the different counties? So what I'd like to ask is that at some point we have a presentation on the property tax.
We did receive more property tax from Amador County. Alpine County, we received less than what we budgeted for. But it was in the financials that were presented for June.
Okay, so I go back, I mean, yes, okay. As I said, it is not actually relevant to the specific question here, so I'm going to rest it here, but we'll go back to that at some point, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Are there other questions about the property tax allocation for the fiscal year that ended June 30th? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the allocation?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Okay, John motions. Is there a second?
Yeah, Dornbrook, I'll second.
Okay, moved in second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickard absent.
Okay, thank you. Okay, move on to item 9F. Eric, I assume this is your staff bonuses.
Yes, at the July board meeting, the board directed personnel to consider supplemental bonus for staff in recognition of extraordinary services rendered during the pandemic for the prior fiscal year. Personnel committee met and recommended a bonus to all full-time staff of 0.5% of their annual salary. Cost impact is $5,800 and it's an unbudgeted item, and personnel committee recommends approval.
Yeah, and we thought the year was tough before the fire.
Yeah, really.
I've had a tougher 2 weeks than I had the prior whole year, so yeah.
Yeah, can believe it.
Yeah, go ahead and move to approve that.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I'll second it. Can we have a roll call?
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickard absent.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item 9G is the employee handbook update.
So there's 5 components that were updated that had to do, most of it had stemmed out of the on-call policy. So the on-call policy affected employee residency requirements, housing credit requirements, cell phone stipend, actually 4 components, and the response time. And we also clarified the difference between KBFD and KMPUD. This came out of recent changes in the law following on-call requirements. Our council reviewed it thoroughly and made multiple suggestions of changes, which are included in the handbook that was attached. Additionally, as we went through, a couple other issues came up as we were updating this. One had to do with floating holidays. Currently, it's a use it or lose it benefit. So if you don't use it by the end of the fiscal year, it goes away. However, the practice, but not the policy, previously was to pay people out on their floating holidays. And we did recently have an employee that terminated their employment, resigned on June 30th. Had that person resigned on July 1st, we would have had to pay out all the holidays, which were for holidays that had yet to occur. Personnel committee felt that this was inappropriate and recommends that floating holidays, much as we do with sick leave, no longer be paid out upon termination of employment. Additionally, we'll be in the next section updating the injury and illness prevention program. The handbook just reflects that as well. So those are the totality of the changes in the handbook. Happy to entertain any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the board on the handbook changes? I assume John Personnel has reviewed this?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience?
I don't see any.
Okay, not hearing any questions. Is there a motion to approve the handbook changes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, John moves. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Bertrand seconds. Peter, roll call.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, Rickard absent.
Okay, that passes. So now we move on to the injury, illness, and prevention program. as we all speed read ahead.
Yes, sorry, I'm on my laptop, so it's much smaller than normal.
I appreciate it.
There we go.
Okay.
So periodically, we have to update our IIPP program to incorporate the latest legal requirements, changes at the district, et cetera. This is I think it's our biannual update.
Yeah, so this revision includes some of the access and record keeping requirements that just came out last year. So this is just a cleanup of the existing and something that we know that the board has complete buy-in for our safety for our employees. So it starts from the top down, and I think the district's done a really good job of expressing to the employees the importance of their safety at the workplace.
Okay, are there any questions about the changes? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Is there a motion to approve the update to the IIPP?
Yeah, Dornbrook, I move to approve the injury, illness, and prevention program.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you, Bertrand. All right, roll call, please, Peter.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
Aye.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickard absent.
Okay, excellent. All right, we'll now move on to item J, the Caltrans Peddler Hill annexation request and the potential for us to expand our customer base.
Yeah, this I think has only been 10 years in the making, since 2011, when it was specifically added to the environmental document that the district prepared for the Out Valley project, specifically the environmental document, the SEQA document, the EIS and EIR, which is also NEPA, says that KMPUD's use of the new power line approved by the project shall be limited to the following: 1, existing developments in the counties of Amador, Alpine, and El Dorado as of July 1st, 2011. Caltrans Peddler Hill obviously existed prior to that. So they have formally requested to come in to annex into the district. I did discuss with district council if they were, if they're able to, since they're not the landowner. The answer is yes, if it's initiated by the board. So obviously there won't be a petition of registered voters for that, and there won't be a petition of the landowner, but the resolution of the board is sufficient to start the annexation process. So we recommend that the board initiate the annexation process, which will then go to Alpine County, LAFCO, even though it's in El Dorado County. Per the JOA and the TriTac agreements between the 3 counties, Alpine County, LAFCO has jurisdiction over all district annexations by LAFCO. So Caltrans did complete the due diligence on the preliminary design. They found it to be feasible. They are proceeding with design now as we speak. But now we need to start the annexation process, and the environmental work is already done. We will contend to Alpine County, LAFCO that the 2011 EIS EIR was the appropriate environmental document and was complete. So it's feasible for us to serve them per our electrical engineer. We will have to initiate a service agreement with them to highlight that we won't be able to serve them during outages. They are aware of this, and they are building redundant generation. They're replacing their current generator house with a new generator house. Before this project goes, it's a 3-phase project, and that's going right now. But staff recommends that the board initiate the LAFCO process, initiate the annexation of property, which we can then submit to Alpine County, LAFCO.
Thank you, Eric. Do you happen to remember what their annual load approximately is?
I do not remember that.
I don't either. Okay. All right, Doug has a question.
Yes.
Please take it away, Doug.
Sorry, Doug. I muted you. I meant to unmute you. Apologize for that. Too quick.
Well, I was going to ask what Bob was just asking, actually, and then how that would impact base rates potentially going forward in terms of adding a new customer base, which is a commercial customer in that way. But we can figure that out another time.
Yeah, Doug, we'll offline work up some numbers I remember doing it last year. I just can't remember where it came into, but obviously they'll be treated the same as our other customers, with the exception that they have a little less service. I don't know how we'll accommodate that,
Yeah,
but we will
they
figure it
will be
out.
treated differently from other customers in that they will have a service agreement that's unique to them.
Right.
Or anyone else that any other properties that existed before July 11th, 2011 that apply for annexation out, that we can't backfeed. It would be similar to that, but the rates will be based the same on the current rate study.
Yeah. Howard, do you have a question?
Yes. So in the review by their engineer, were they looking at the possibility of electrifying their vehicles, or is this just like regular electrical demand that they already have?
This is existing demand that they have.
So this would not allow them to electrify their fleet and draw off of?
I can't speculate on that. I do not know if they've considered that or not.
Okay. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Howard. That's a good question. Are there other questions about the annexation?
I guess this is Pete. I guess a question going forward that we should probably investigate is, will this impact our ability to charge vehicles here in Kirkwood during heavy periods of load, like on a Saturday in the winter? I think it's something that we might want to calculate a little bit.
This load is so de minimis that that's not an issue.
And does it vary as the seasons vary at all?
No, it's running their shops. Their shops run, all year round.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah. It's a really small transformer that we're dropping to. It's just an expensive one because we're coming off a 34.5 down to a 480 and then to a 220. So it's expensive, but it's not a huge demand. And that's based on their current generator load runs, but I just don't know what that is off the top of my head. And I'm not sitting at my desktop in Kirkwood, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm just thinking for, as the process continues, it might be worthwhile to investigate some of that.
We can definitely budget for it and retain our engineer to do that analysis if the board so desires. Absolutely. I think Carolyn has a question, Bob.
Okay, Carolyn, please unmute and go ahead.
You have to unmute Carolyn. Oops.
Yeah.
Okay, I have two questions. One is, are they currently on their own generators totally? Or is there did they have some other hookup? And the other question.
Generators.
Okay, so they'd be replacing those, modernizing or more efficient, or?
They're replacing those generators as a backup, but their primary source of power would become the out valley line.
Okay, and is Cable's maintenance station expressed any interest?
We don't have facilities there that can serve Cable's maintenance station.
Do we have to, then we don't have to run a new line for Peddler Hill, but we would for Cable's?
There's new infrastructure that has to be created for Peddler Hill that comes off of the line, but that will be Caltrans line after the transformer. Our line does not go anywhere near Cable's Lake maintenance station. It ends at Kirkwood.
Yeah, it doesn't now, I know that, but I was just curious whether they had thought of that. If they're looking at annexing now to one station, do you know if they've thought of the other one? That's all.
I don't know.
Karen, you'll remember when we did the tour, we made sure our line went really close to Peddler Hill.
Yeah,
so
I do remember.
Connect.
I do remember.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there other questions about the annexation proposal?
Well, I have questions / comments. So the first one would be, would Caltrans, I mean, we don't have currently commercial versus residential, but if we go there someday, would that be considered as commercial? Why they are typically, I mean, they are governmental, they are not commercial. So that's just a rhetorical question here. We don't have to solve it, but I'd like to, at some point to have some clarity there. The other one is what about the connection fee? So we actually are this year going to revise, if I'm right, if I understand properly, our connection fees. And I think this is something that we really need to go forward since we have changed our rate structure a lot. And I think I would like to see this going on before we actually proceed an annexation. So to make sure that annexation run with the current, the proper connection fees system. So that's one thing I'm concerned. I'm also concerned we don't have any data on what they are using now, at least in this proposal summary, and what potentially could become if, as expected, based on the impetus from both the state and the federal government, that there is significant electrification on vehicle fleet. And I really think we need to assess that before we actually make this blanket statement that we do have the capacity, and knowing that we don't have storage capacity on our hand to buffer, increase our capacity without actually running fuel in the valley, I mean, generator with fuel in the valley. So at this stage, I'd like to have more clarification on all these points before we actually move on this annexation.
Are there other comments? Okay, not hearing any. Is there a motion to move forward and approve this annexation?
Yes, Dornbrook, I so move.
Okay, Dormick moves. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Peter, roll call.
Epstein,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Perot,
No.
Dornbrook, aye, and Rickard absent. So it's
Okay.
3 to 1 to 1.
Okay. That passes. So we'll move on to item L, the wastewater treatment plant schedule.
We've had this come through again before, but just with an update. We received very late, or USDA received very late, actually outside the comment period, but USDA decided to allow them from Fish and Wildlife and the Wilton Rancheria, which is down in, for those that don't know where Wilton is, it's near Galt, between Stockton and Sacramento, for those that aren't familiar. And they had comments which have been addressed to the satisfaction of USDA. And so that has been submitted to national at this point. But this is presuming everything goes forward and we receive the funding from USDA, this would be the schedule of the various phases of the project that are proposed by the engineer. So you can see we break it into winter and then summer, fall, over the course of 2 years. And as John mentioned, and I think Eric McKean mentioned as well, our financing goes through 2025 just to give us a cushion, but this is the estimated schedule we would have. I would note that the conditioned space improvements and the replacement of the valves and the electric improvements, we have 70% design plans submitted on those. We just have held off on finalizing those and submitting them to USDA until we received final approval from them. So those actually have been in process for some time, but we hit the pause button so we would not expend funds that were not potentially reimbursable.
Eric, can you just back up for 1 second? Did we just do a negative declaration on this, or did we didn't do an backing up to your first comment?
Yes.
We didn't do a new CEQA document, did we?
Yes, we did.
We did. Oh,
we did a CEQA document. The NEPA was the one that the CEQA document we did in April of 2020. We started that process, but then USDA, we were going to do a categorical exclusion, which is the federal version of a categorical exemption, which is what we did for CEQA.
Oh, okay.
USDA said they didn't feel that was appropriate because of our proximity to wetlands, even though we're not disturbing any new ground, nor are we in the creek or in the floodplain. Okay. But they made us do a, it wasn't an EIS, thankfully, but it was the level between the CADX and the EIS.
Okay. And there were questions raised downstream about it that were resolved?
There were questions at the very end of the process. A month after they were supposed to get their comments back, there were questions raised. Fish and Wildlife finally gave their consult concurrence, and then Wilton Rancheria said we were in sensitive archaeological area, and they wanted us to pay them to be on site. We already had in our mitigation and monitoring plan to have a USDA certified archaeological inspector on site for any ground disturbance. We felt that was adequate, so did USDA, and that was the response, but there was a lot of back and forth and final approval to make that happen.
Thank you for the clarification.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been over a year on that other doc. It's hard to remember, I think.
Apparently. Okay, are there questions from the board or the audience on the schedule? Okay, not hearing any. Eric, thank you for the update. And we'll move, so we're skipping M, we've deferred since we don't have it, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're now on the item N, fuel reduction, fire prevention. And Director Dornbook, I see your name here. Should we start with you?
Sure, why not?
Okay, great. And Peter, what was it like? You've been living there for the last several weeks, right?
I evacuated for 10 days down to Minden, and I came back on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
It's just so I could have a good perspective of the situation prior to this meeting.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, in the operations committee, we had discussed the chipping program, the feasibility of it. We discussed the alternative green dumpster, and it's been proven to be a lot more popular than we originally thought. So we've kind of expanded it. There was a question. Maybe Terry Woodruff, she's still on board. Alpine County approved a $10,000, I think, to Bear Valley for chipping. Is that correct, Terry?
Terry, please unmute. Thanks.
Yes, we have a chipping program every year because we don't have any place to take it. On the other side, they have a burn pile. We don't have any place for a burn pile over here. So we ask for those funds every year, but it'll probably service us for a year and a half. And that was from the Secure Rural School dollars. It was the last allocation of the Secure Rural School dollars. And unless the Secure Rural School dollars get reauthorized again, there won't be any more money coming to the county.
Okay, I was just curious if the PUD should apply for that, but it doesn't sound like it has a future going forward. Is that correct?
Right, unless it gets reallocated, and I haven't seen any indication that it will. This is from, the year 2000. And originally, I believe you did get some of these chipper dollars through the Alpine Fire Safe Council back in the beginning, but then you bought your chipping equipment and you were doing it on your own.
Okay, thanks for the update. Just explore all avenues to reduce fuel.
Well, I'll let you know if it gets reauthorized and
sure, yeah,
and we have money out there.
Because I think going forward, any kind of combination that we can come up with to reduce the fire danger is important. Obviously now. And the other issue that we had discussed within the operations committee was rather than assessing the solid waste program for the green dumpsters, maybe it would be more appropriate to consider it fire prevention and make it part of the fire department's budget. These are issues that we've just been discussing. We haven't really come to any conclusions at this point. And I guess the question I have now is, since the Forest Service has done an awful lot of tree trimming and bulldozing because of the fire, have they given us any indication that they're going to remove some of the debris that they've cleared? Have you heard anything, Eric?
Yeah, Peter, one thing I wanted to add on your first comment.
Sure, go
went
ahead.
fast for those who weren't in operations. There was a lot of discussion about whether solid waste is the appropriate place for the green waste disposal.
Right.
And the discussion was that it was disparately unfair to condo owners versus single family residences. And so the idea that I think gained some traction in operations, Peter, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, was what about updating our fire assessment and do it based on lot square footage? And so we needed direction from the board. Do we want to continue to pursue it in the solid waste ordinance, because that's in process now? And if it doesn't need to be in there, then I need to take it out. Or should we look at doing a updated assessment? Or we currently have a fire assessment, we could do one based on lot square footage. And so that was the big question that needed to be answered by the board before we continued on the solid waste ordinance, right, Peter?
Right, and does that, and it's technically the impact fee, isn't it called, for the fire department?
It would be part of the assessment. We would have to do an updated assessment. We already have an assessment, a special assessment. We would just do a supplementary special assessment.
Does that include undeveloped property?
Yes, it would include everything in our service area. Yes.
I think that might be appropriate because a lot of the current fuel dangers on undeveloped property. So that might be a good rationale to go in that direction.
Yeah.
Because I've heard complaints from people that people with undeveloped property aren't cleaning their lots and laying the burden on developed property.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, just rhetorically.
And then to answer your other question about the CAL FIRE, and it was Forest Service and CAL FIRE both that cut those trees and contractors. I just know from personal experience, a friend of mine who has a 2,000 acre ranch right along the McColmy River, CAL FIRE and the crews came in and cleared his property during the Butte fire. It was his responsibility to dispose of the slash. The state took no responsibility for that. So I'm assuming they'll probably do the same to us. They haven't even cleaned the stuff along the highway, as I'm sure you saw. So
sure.
There's a few hands up, Bob. Peter was done.
Yeah. So Peter, when you're done, we'll open up for other comments, and then let's get all the comments and then come back to deciding this question that Eric has raised about doing it in fire or doing it in solid waste. So,
I guess.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One
Peter.
other thing I'd like to add as a possibility is we've gotten charitable donations recently. Would it be appropriate to use that for removing fuel? Just a hypothetical question.
Right. Okay. So let's get all the comments and then come back to the questions. And we first ask on Fleur to unmute, and also I hope you'll comment on some of the projects that you've been proposing.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well, staying safe. So for the fire, several months ago, I volunteered to help get the FireWise program started in the Kirkwood community. We had a communications, I think it was communications committee meeting to have a committee started for it, and we had several volunteers sign up for that committee in July, I believe. And we have now several more volunteers that have joined the efforts to get this going and move it forward. So I think we have the ability to hit the ground running now and really get this going and have the support we need. to make it happen. So, and my mom's here with me. She has also volunteered to take the lead of this project due to my limited time. So I'll continue providing my expertise and knowledge of having done it once before. And she's gonna help push the project along. But one of the really great things that the Amador County Firewise Council has continually called me to check on the status of this Firewise application for is that they have grant funding to give our community, once we are a Firewise certified community, to do defensible space work. And that can include shipping programs, that can include hiring crews to do defensible space work, that can include paying for dumpsters. So we need to get that ball rolling, but setting up the Firewise committee is can take a month, 2 months if we have the support we need. Once we have that in place, we can then get this funding to help support the defensible space programs in our community. So I think that that's a good thing that we will need the PUD support and we will need other agencies' support, but I think that we're in a position where we can move that forward. And the other thing I wanted to comment on was that regarding the dozer lines, they do come back and repair the dozer lines, but I don't know to what extent they clean things up. I have a friend who's a resource specialist for the U.S. Forest Service, and she is currently on the Caldor fire, helping them rebuild, put things back in place. She also helps identify where to put these dozer lines when there's sensitive resources, creek beds, generally trying to minimize the damage and then fix the damage afterwards. And she's volunteered to help us with our Firewise plan and help identify areas where we can create fire breaks around our community and how to rebuild things in a responsible manner. But in talking to her, they do some cleanup of those dozer lines. But having seen them in the past, I think there still is a lot of slash that gets left in the forest that we may want to help remove as part of this program.
Good morning. So I'm very happy to be involved in that Firewise project, and it's a really straightforward application to follow. And since everybody is become so skilled in Zoom, I think we can reach out to every single lot homeowner and get everybody involved in this project. So I will be hopefully soon in Kirkwood myself and see how amazing the work of the firefighters has been for the last few weeks, and then we can go from there.
Good. Thank you both for volunteering and for all of your efforts. We all appreciate it. Carolyn? I'm sorry, Bertrand. Go ahead.
Just one more comment on this Firewise thing is, once we are Firewise community, most insurance should forward a 10% discount on homeowner insurance. So it'll be a dividend for everybody in the valley owning a property.
Thank you. Carolyn, your hand's raised. You want to unmute and offer your comments?
Okay, a couple comments. If you go to square footage on a lot as your assessment, would you still consider whether or not the lot had a structure? Because it seems to me that it should be more with a structure than without. The other issue then is, so I have 2 lots in the Palisades with no improvements, so I get no utility bill. What I'm hearing then is I would all of a sudden be getting a utility bill. Would I then have to pay base rates on everything as well? And part of my lots are designated wetlands. So it seems to me if you're going to go to square footage on a lot, you ought to look at where the wetlands are, because that's not trees, that's wetlands. So those would be my, and I'm wondering what committee is looking at this, because I didn't think we talked about going to lot acreage in our operations. So I don't recall that.
Carolyn, I think at this point, we're just collecting ideas and then deciding what approach to use, not the details.
Okay,
So,
well,
yeah.
those are my comments. You know, I think.
Okay, no, I appreciate the comments. So the questions I first heard is the question that Eric and Peter raised about whether we should think about this as being part of the fire department budget or as part of solid waste. So Eric, should we start, and Peter, should we start with that question?
Sure, go ahead.
First?
Yeah.
Okay. So first from the board, are there comments on which way to go or questions
Comments,
about this?
I would make the comment that if green dumpsters are belonging to the fire department, then tax allocation could be used to pay for that. And I think that's a reasonable thing to look at. I would also say that, basically helping for defensible space belongs more to the fire department than to the dumpsters, to the waste department, in my opinion. So I would support that.
Okay. John, do you have any comments in the direction?
I think it's whatever would be the most fair and straightforward way and assured way that it can be funded. So
okay.
if Bertrand's comment about being able to do tax allocation for that helps, I think that should be a consideration. I think it's just important that we can get it done, and probably the most sure way to get it financed.
Right. And Eric and Rick, is there a staff recommendation?
No, this just came out of ops, but I would say the well of property tax is dry. We can't keep going to that same well. We've allocated it all, so there is no more property tax. We don't have a magic money tree, unfortunately. If we did, believe me, I'd find money for all sorts of good things we need to do at the district. But I know there's grants available from the Firewise that might possibly lead into this. But I would, I just need to know if we want to take it out of solid waste, and there was some consensus to take it out of that at the operations meeting.
Okay, and just one clarification I'd like to add is the proposal, if it did move into fire, then a special assessment would be an additional line item on existing property taxes. It wouldn't be a new bill.
That is correct.
That's correct. I mean, in terms of answering Carolyn's question.
Yeah, it's not a utility bill. We would go through the Proposition 218 process to either update the existing assessment or do a new special assessment just for fuel reduction.
Right.
And then the money can live with the fire department. It would come through the property tax bill, though. You are absolutely correct. Just like the current assessment does. And
the benefit of doing square footage, independent of whether we look at whether it's a wetland or not, to Carolyn's question, is that the small condo units that don't have any trees would pay less than the larger properties with trees.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Okay. Yes. I mean, obviously, if it's based on lot square footage, yes, it'd be much less for a studio versus a 1 acre lot. Correct.
Okay. And Flora, you want to add some additional comments?
Yeah, I agree that it makes sense to have this under the fire department's scope, because it's really going to impact their department the most, and that I think doing it through a fire assessment also makes sense. I can't imagine that cost to each individual owner is going to be a major impact. I mean, I think we're talking about 5 or 6 months of having a defensible space dumpster, and maybe some other things end up getting added to that scope. But if you divide that out over 5 months and the cost of the dumpsters over all the properties, it seems like it should be a minimal yearly impact on those existing fire assessment fees that everyone's paying.
Okay, thank you. And Carolyn, you have an additional comment?
I guess you've talked about, well, several people have mentioned grants to do this fire prevention and defensible space. Are those available to an individual or only to the government entity here?
I'm not familiar with individual grants unless there's an FMAG or a disaster that's come through. But I agree with what Eric and everybody's saying. Essentially, if it comes under the fire department, we would have the opportunity to get probably more grants, or at least be eligible for more grants.
Okay, and Fleur?
Yeah, just to answer Carolyn's question really quick, I'm aware of grants for large property owners. If you own several hundred acres, there are grants out there to help you do defensible space on your property, but not for small property owners that own a couple acres or less than an acre. Beyond that, it's through the FireWise program or through an agency.
Yeah, I would like to add on the concept of moving these defensible space expenses to the fire department is if we do an assessment, a parcel assessment, which I think would address a concern between condos and lot owners, that really make more sense to have actually these dumpsters moved, the green dumpsters moved to the fire department, because that's where the money would go.
Okay. So the open question I'd like to get board decision on is to no longer have the chipping program be part of solid waste, and instead we would consider moving it into the fire department. Eric, that's the clarification you're looking for right now. So let me see if there's board consensus on that, so Eric knows how to move forward. I mean, I would certainly support that personally.
I support too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good with that.
And I do also, and I
Okay.
believe Eric Rickard has expressed his support for that previously.
Okay, so Eric, that gives you the direction that you're asking for?
Yes, I can now complete the first draft of the solid waste ordinance for ops.
Okay, great. And I feel like we need to put out the Caldor fire before we spend too much time thinking about new tasks or whatever. But let me just say that once the fire's out and people have some time to catch their breath, we could then sort of look at, well, what's the best way to move? We want to move forward on the FireWise. I appreciate the volunteer effort to do that. But in terms of how to budget this and the best way to manage it, rather than trying to figure that out right now, when we can all catch our breath and staff has some time, we would figure out the best way to manage this going forward and then come back with a proposal of how to proceed. I assume that would work for everybody.
As this is going to be a traditional assessment, we would hire a Proposition 218 assessment engineer to perform that. That would be done by a consultant, not by staff.
Right, that would be done, and we would come up with some idea of what we think an effective budget is to give us good fire protection now that we all know how much we need it. And we're just lucky the fire didn't come from the south and hop over Thunder Ridge and come down into the West Meadows, because that would have been hard to stop.
I think Kelly has a question, Bob.
Yeah, Kelly, please.
Not a question. I just wanted to make everybody aware that any staff time that is coded to the fire department for any of this, that is not, those hours are not included in our CalPERS pension. So we decided long ago that because those hours that staff was spending in the fire department were not being accounted for in their pension, the staff time is paid at a higher rate in the fire department for those hours. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that any staff time coded to the fire department is not counted towards their retirement or pension, and we pay at a higher rate.
Okay, well, that seems only fair. So thanks for reminding us.
Yep.
can you summarize what's the status on the not fundraising, because it's not fundraising, it was spontaneous donation, knowing that there was a suggestion that maybe some of that money could be used for defensible space expenses. So where are we now? I saw that there was amazingly a lot of contribution from the community to the fire department.
We're right at about $35,000. When I left the office on yesterday, we were just and donations were pouring in to, and it's to the 501c3. So it's not the fire department fund, it's going to our 501c3, and it's going to, because these were non-solicited donations, we don't have to use it for like this specific, we don't have to use it for the fire truck that we were raising money for. These were unsolicited general donations that have gone into just the general 501c3 fund and don't have to be used for a specific piece of equipment that we solicited donations for.
Thanks, Guy. Again, I just want to emphasize that I'd rather give Rick time to put the fire out, get some rest, and then we can ask him what's the most efficient use of funds. But we don't have to decide today.
Absolutely.
Rick, did you want to add a comment?
No, I totally agree, and I appreciate everybody's support and comments about this. I think this community really rallied during this event, and I look forward to the next several months to really formalizing a plan for everybody's benefit.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for being there.
May I suggest that at some point we get some kind of debriefing on this Caldor event and how lucky we were. I mean, it's more than luck. I mean, there was amazing amount of work by a lot of people, but we are also lucky that the wind we are blowing in the right direction for Kirkwood, and could have been different with a different wind. So I just think it's important that to ingrain in people's brain that we really need to be more proactive about defending our valley in that climate change era.
Yeah, we were going to bring that back on the October because obviously the fire is still going on, so it's premature to do anything now. But there's a lot of lessons learned. Rick and I have been talking about a lot of new things, you know, formalizing the communications protocols that we implemented during the fire, for example, you know, how we handle evacuations, how we handle staff. You know, I mean, the office was empty aside from firefighters 2 weeks ago, and this week it's only operators. Are the only ones being let through the roadblocks. So I'm curious how Peter got through. He must have finagled his way through somehow.
Peter can do anything. Come on.
So, there's a lot of lessons.
He responds
learned.
to all challenges.
There's a lot of lessons learned that we need to bring back, and you know, assuming everything goes well in the next week or two with the remaining fire, which is still close and still an issue potentially, we'll be able to bring that back in October. But it's going to be a little more comprehensive, but it'll definitely address what you asked for, Bertrand, but it's going to be even more than that, I think.
And I'd like to add also kudos to the staff, actually in this case, both Rick and Eric, for the level of communication that they provided to the community during this event. That was very, very well done. Thank you.
And Bob was our lifeline. He was able to access the stuff we couldn't access remotely. So without Bob, those would not have been able to go out. So he just, yeah, definitely Bob needs the credit.
He was not showing up, so I was not aware, but yes, absolutely.
He's behind the scenes. He could access the stuff that we couldn't access. So he helped us out a lot.
Absolutely. That was very well appreciated, I think, by the community.
It is. You know, that's the other thing at the download, but I'll just mention it briefly. I mean, I was receiving some days 80 emails a day from people, and 90% of those were appreciative, 5% were questions, and 5% wanted to argue about CAL FIRE and U.S. Forest Service. And not my monkey, not my circus. I'm not going to worry about those, but I will be bringing back the totality of those thank you emails to our fire department once I've assembled them all, and I'll share this with the board as well. It's a lot, but I think it's good to see. For the board to be able to see that what the community really thought during the process.
And the communications went to 1,100 email addresses.
And how many did we get
each
signed up for
day.
emergency, Bob? For
I have to check, but probably at least 100.
So,
you know, and some of them were already signed up. And Rick, after exhausting putting out fire all day long, then sat down and wrote a write-up. So that's above and beyond the call of duty. So thanks, Rick.
Yeah, of course. And that between 4 and 7 o'clock is sort of the hour where everything happens. So hopefully some of those messages were comprehensible, but it was some crazy times there for a few days.
Absolutely.
Still sort of is.
Peterson, this is your topic. Let me come back to you. Any concluding remarks? Anything else you want to add?
Well, I was probably talk under the operations report. I have some concerns about the dozer lines and potential effects on our service lines that were dozed over. I have some, but I think maybe it'd be more appropriate to talk under the operations report.
Okay, good. Then I think we've concluded a really good discussion on N. I think we have a good direction, and we'll get started on it when we're ready. and in the meantime, everything we can to get the Firewise stuff on the appreciate the volunteer efforts and whatever we need to do to get that in place, because that's clearly an important item to get done. Okay, well, then we're ready to move on to item 10, the general manager's report. Eric, do you want to add anything else?
helps if I unmute. The only thing I would add is that during the initial evacuation week, it happened to fall on the Aqua conference, or not the Aqua, the CSDA conference. So I actually was able to attend that and work remotely from there, since I couldn't get into the Valley anyway that first week. And I did learn there's a lot of takeaways, one of which was seizing the opportunity to get more people to sign up, which I relayed to Bob, and he promptly implemented. And as he said, we have over 100 new signups for our urgent notifications, which is huge. And I think people finally understand the value of it. So that was one thing that was really great. Yeah, I learned a couple other things I'll be bringing back later on through the various committees that are appropriate. But there's one thing I do want to highlight at this time that I was completely unaware of, and Bob asked the same questions when I told him all about this. And so, you know, it's going to sound counterintuitive, but it is the law. It is not subject to debate. If there's a post on Facebook, for example, I posted Rick's message on Facebook and I got more than one like from a board member, more than one board member, not two, not three, I mean, not three, not four, 2 board members. That's a violation of AB 992 and the Brown Act. Please, if you see another board member has liked a post on Facebook or Nextdoor, do not like it. That is a violation and subjects us to action for violation of the Brown Act. Had no idea that it was that. I thought the threshold was 3. It is 2, or it is, yeah, 2 is the threshold. So one more member can like it. What I'd recommend instead, if you do like a message that the district posts or someone else posts, share it on your own page. And that is perfectly permissible. But then a board member cannot go on. Bob can't go to Bertrand's page and hit the like button. That would also be a violation of the Brown Act. So just a clarification I thought was important, especially during the crisis time, to let the board know so we don't have any further violations of the Brown Act like we did in the last couple of weeks. But as I told Bob, when I asked this question to the attorney that was presenting at the conference, he said, if anyone sued you over it, I'd represent you pro bono because that's BS. But we want to stay in compliance, be fully transparent and open. So we just don't want to do that at all. So just letting the board know, and I'll bring back a lot of other stuff through the committees over the next few months that I think is really important and we need to update and get current with the laws.
Thanks, Eric. Anything else on your report?
No, I'm exhausted, but not as exhausted as Rick. I think he was 108 hours last week, or the week before. So he definitely deserves some big kudos. So I'm sure his operations are probably just as short as mine.
Rick, the floor is yours if you want to add anything for an operations report.
Well, first, like I said before, I want to thank the community, the board, and everybody's support. It was a collective effort to do what we did, along with CAL FIRE, Forest Service, and numerous agencies from throughout the state. I think our team learned a lot, and we're continuing to build and grow throughout this incident. I also would like to thank district staff, Ed Benson, who held down the fort when we had a ground fault during this event. And he had to scramble around with other district staff to basically secure the line and re-energize the valley, and just a lot going on with electric and propane, but he did an excellent job. And then Brandon Berzese and Chris Hosnick from Water Wastewater held down the fort and continued to ensure that we had enough water supply for the multiple agencies that were stationed in the Kirkwood Valley to help protect us. So again, a thanks to district staff for all they've done. As
And
Eric
Tommy
mentioned,
Baggett.
oh, and Tommy Baggett, yeah, sorry. Tommy was also instrumental, especially with electric and propane. He was the #2 operator and or safety guy for Ed during some of the ground faults. So thanks, Eric, for mentioning that.
That accounting background really paid off.
Yeah. Yes, it sure did. As you may have seen in the email that went out yesterday, we are back on grid power. We did several inspections of our power line, and I'm happy to say that we really didn't sustain any fire damage up until this point. Things can change, and they have. So, but right now we are currently on grid power, and it's nice to give the generators a rest and service those just in case we need them again. And I will be bringing back another full report in the October meeting. But again, just want to say thanks to everybody, and that's my end of my report.
Rick, I assume our propane and diesel levels are sufficient, because obviously we're not getting new shipments.
Yes, propane was fine throughout this whole event. Of course, we didn't have that much usage for propane. For electric, we still have about 8 days. We were using about 950 gallons a day off of one generator. At some points, we actually were on 2 generators when Vail's snowmaking equipment was on. But we still have plenty in reserve. It's actually a pretty good run for us for the generators. They seem to operate just fine. The calibrations went really well. So again, that's kudos to district staff with maintaining standby equipment. It really paid off in this event.
Okay, and Carolyn, do you have a question? Go ahead and unmute.
So if only operations people only were allowed back in the last few days, who was running the powerhouse? I mean, did it have to just be firefighters, or were Brandy's people allowed in to do that? I was curious how you were running it.
Essential utility workers are essential, and so they were allowed to stand by and stay in the valley. And we assigned one electric propane member, Ed Benson, to do that task, and also cover the on-call after hours. He worked a lot of hours and did a great job for us.
And he was allowed to stay in the valley?
Yes.
Okay.
I have one question to this switch to the generator. So the loss of power we had was not due to the switch, but to a ground fault. That's what I understood from the previous explanation. Is that correct?
No, we were switching over to emergency power, but at the exact same time when we were starting up snowmaking pumps and somebody was dozing behind the Kirkwood Inn, we actually had a ground fault, which we had to troubleshoot out to that location.
Okay,
so,
interesting. And my next question is, so when you switch back to the out valley, to the grid, we had no power interruption, is that correct?
Actually, that was the second most seamless switchover that we've ever had. So the hard work that we did hiring the consultant to come in and troubleshoot the switchovers paid off. So
that's what I wanted to underscore. It actually went very smoothly back in. I have marker because I have a few of my electronic fancy gadget don't like being turned off, and so I know right away when we have a power shortage, and I was delighted to see we were able to switch back fully without interruption, and thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay, Rick, anything else for operations?
No, Bob, that's it.
Okay,
I have some
good.
questions for Rick.
Oh, please go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
Since coming back to the valley, I've had an opportunity to walk on some of the dozer areas, including the one in my yard. And I have some concerns about potential damage to our service lines. I know that they came down the easement, the main sewer main easement from Fremont to Kirkwood Meadows Drive. They dozed that completely. And I found lids to cleanouts in the debris pile. So I have some concerns that like our sewer main may be damaged, and especially looking over at the houses on the northwest side of Fremont at the end of the cul-de-sac there, where they had significant impacts. Obviously, that was the main fire break, comes from Highway 88, goes down behind the Glasgow house, and then goes up to Dangberg. And have we had an opportunity to inspect those lines for any damages, like especially propane in particular?
Not yet, but we will. Again,
Okay.
we're still under mandatory evacuation. Unless you're essential, you shouldn't be in Kirkwood right now.
Right.
And until they lift that, I won't have staff available to actually go and do field inspections on properties and check our infrastructure.
How about, since there's hardly any, has the computer indicated any extraordinary usage of propane? Since there's nobody in the valley using propane, I would think that if we saw usage, that could potentially indicate a leak.
No, we've been watching that. Kelly was back in the office on Wednesday, I think, or Tuesday. There's been some leaks in people's homes, but that, running toilet, that sort of thing, that just happened right before.
Water leaks.
Yeah, water leaks right before. They happen right before the evacuation, so they were unrelated, that they've gone on. So we'll be dealing with that. But bottom line is, no, there's nothing in our distribution system, whether it's electric, aside from the one ground fault, propane or water, that's an issue that we've identified.
Okay, because and you're planning on bringing staff back on Monday potentially?
Yes.
So that I just think it's a priority. I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I think that especially on Fremont and Merrill and Fremont Court, that's where they were the most aggressive, and it makes me nervous.
I'd like to second what Peter said here. Is actually we cannot take a chance on propane leaks. Water is something, but propane is another one, and I think should be high priority. Yeah.
Agreed.
I guess the other comment
but we care about the whole valley, so we'll definitely be looking at the whole valley, not just one. We'll do the whole valley.
Sure. Kelly, you want to comment on the meter reporting?
Yeah, when I got back on Wednesday, I took meter reads at it was right around noon on September 8th, and honestly, there was no excessive use of propane, and like Eric said, just the one there was one home that had a running toilet that we turned off. So definitely there was no indication that there was any propane leaks or anything like that. I mean, after the meter anyway, I can't speak for before the meters, but there was no indication that there was any, excessive propane use. And with the reads from the propane tank, it was not in, there was no indication that there was any kind of propane leak anywhere.
Talking about emergency process here, I know that we left our cabin for evacuation. We actually shut off the propane valve, which is before the meter, I mean, on the KMPUD side of the meter. And I think we should actually communicate to property owners that this is a kind of process they should do when there is a mandatory evacuation. I would suggest, actually. Yeah.
I'm going to suggest that I think Rick has, we're just doing the operations report. Rick's exhausted. There's a lot of things we'll need to do, but let's give people some rest for now. Okay, standing committee reports. Finance.
Well, finance mostly focused on the wastewater treatment plant commercial loan. So there's probably not much else to add.
Okay. Operations.
One thing I did observe since I've been back is that they dozed the road up to our water tank up on Dangberg, and it's now a fire break more than a road. And I think that going forward, we're going to need to come up with a plan to make that road drivable again in some manner, whether it's compaction or I know it's a long way off, but I think it's something we have to put on our list. And also I'd like to comment that they dosed the Dangberg Trail, which is a big relief because that was a huge fuel source. But that's all I have to add.
Okay. Well, let me say I look forward to skiing over both those spots. Okay, planning, Bertrand?
So planning actually met twice since last board meeting. So I'm going to go quickly on this item first because I don't have all my notes there. It's not the dog eat my homework, is the evacuation kept my homework out of my hand. So, and Eric with a K, please feel free to step in if I miss something important and or again mischaracterize, because it's actually the problem when we skip a meeting like that, things piled up in the brain, and I'm not sure I'll be totally accurate in my representation. I do my best from memory only.
I'm here to help, Bertrand.
Thank you. The first thing is we talk about in July was see, and it was on the recommendation of the board, to see if we should put together an electrical base fee appeal or exception process. Currently, the planning committee, actually, that's something I noticed that we have not done in the consent. I don't think in the consent we actually seated Howard on the planning committee, have we?
I thought that was the same time that John became treasurer. I'll go back and check, Bertrand, but if not, we'll correct it. But I thought it was that same meeting.
I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, so please confirm that. So we have basically had a very narrow board planning committee together, knowing that one board member has a family emergency and he cannot attend currently. Another one has resigned, and Howard was not seated at the time. And so that being said, we still discuss and made progress, but we actually did not come to a full resolution because I think we need to have a full board planning committee to get there. But bottom line, the consensus on this electrical base fee appeal or exception process is it was definitively not something of a high priority. That actually there was 2 people against it. There was 2 people that wanted to have something extremely narrow and well defined, meaning we would have to spend a lot of time to try to develop such a process. And there are more urgent things in front of this committee that are a higher priority in our opinion, all of them. So basically, we are not going to come up quickly with any process in that direction if we ever do. So that to clear up things, because I think there is an expectation from some board members or from the community that we will come up with some kind of exception process or appeal system, but it's not in the oven at this stage. So it's just not going to happen
Yeah, my recollection on that, Bertrand, since you
Yeah.
asked for me to help on that, was
It-
it was an overwhelming consensus against providing that. And
Yeah.
we needed to bring it back to the board with just that. And what does the board want to really do? I think so I think the October meeting, I think we talked about bringing it back to the full board.
Yeah.
Just to get direction, based on what planning said.
So that means, yes, so the end of the story here is, yes, let's have that at the board, in front of the board at the next board meeting, so we can actually have more direction on that. But the planning committee was not going to move on its own based on the consensus, okay? So that's number one. Number two, we start talking about EV charging, and we were cut short. We basically start to find what could the district provide for HOA to actually have some EV charging solutions, and so that brings me to and we are cut short. So now I'm bringing me to the second meeting that we had last August. It was August 18. And so on this one, let me try to find my note here. Yeah, so we started again on EV charging, and this time basically agree that the district will do its best to identify opportunities, I would say, for charging station in the valley, and that actually need an engineer assessment to identify capacity opportunity. And so this is something that's going to take a certain amount of time. And until then, we need to wait basically to know where are the possibilities. There was also a discussion on level 3 versus level 2. Level 3 is actually more needed for day visitors, and actually it seems that it's actually should be more the responsibility of either Tesla or similar infrastructure companies, or Vel, who wants to provide such a service to his day visitors. And level 2 are more for homeowners. And so I think at this stage, Vel is planning to have via ChargePoint 4 sites available in October near the lodge. I'm not sure exact location. It may be the same. I'm not sure about that. But so this is what we have now. It is a clear, it's not sufficient at all for the valley with, and so we clearly have more work to do in that area. And the planning committee is going to look at number of things and see what are possible sites for KMPUD actually, lower tier 7 parking next to KMPUD parcel, or next to the current power plant, or what about the other locations. And but we will need coordination with other parties from the valley, and I think that's going to have to happen so we can make progress there. So EV charging is not going to happen fast. We need an engineer assessment. We need to have site identify and also on, but we will keep working on that. Do you want to add something, Eric, on that topic?
No, I think you covered that pretty well.
Thank you. Then the next item we talked about was how to use a public good charge fund. So since August 1st, 2021, we are collecting 2.85% of the usage fee and set it up in a special fund that by law and also by the recommendation of our legal advice can be used for specific things. And the 4 typical things that we could use it for are energy efficiency, conservation, R&D, and low-income programs. So the question before the planning committee was what the best use for this public good charge fund. And clearly, we actually look at 4 different things that could actually be worthwhile for the district to implement. And that would be to have a public energy efficiency to try to help electrifications, that we heat pump for heating or hot water, induction stove, electrification would be mean again shift from propane use. And so we have not made any decision. We are basically exploring what else could be possible in that area. Another one would be, and some people have proposed that we use this fund to actually improve the energy efficiency of the district. And that would be typically looking at how to reduce loss in our systems. And it could be argued this is not the proper use of public good charge fund, typically, at least the way every other PUD, IOUs or POUs, invested owner or public owned utilities. But certainly we have actually a great latitude in the law to how we use funds. So it's definitely something that we should look at. And so it was asked to the staff to come up with a proposal of what could be done and what would be the cost to help the energy efficiency of the district. Then there is a low income program that could be done. There is potential applicants that are not too many in this valley, but actually make it actually a positive thing for the program, because it would not consume much of the public good charge fund, because only a few people probably in the valley could qualify. Typically, the way it's done, people on other IOUs and POUs is people who are enrolled in federal assistance program do qualify for such a thing. I mean, there is also some income criteria, but anyway, the typical program offers a 20% discount, and I think this is something we are going to look at as well. And then the last area which we identified that could be make use of such a public good charge fund is EV charging station. Actually, a question that we ask and we have not answered yet is, can EV charging station be funded with public good charge fund? So this is the 4 areas. This is not a finished list. We are still working on it, and the next meeting is next week. And we are going to keep discussing on what other solutions are here. And then the last topic that we use, and it was just the beginning, is propane use shifting. And in this area, there is 2 different things. And one of them is, should we have incentive, which is back to what we discussed initially on the public, on the potential rebate for heat pump or things like that. But there is also policy-wise, does the district want to continue to offer new account, either for new development or existing development, for new account of propane, I meant indeed. And that is something that we will be discussing more at this coming meeting. And based on what Eric said from the legal side of it, he had checked with legal advice, and the district has actually latitude to stop offering new account for propane. And in this case, if we do that, do we need to have some kind of incentive or system to support people that are, I don't know. So this is still, as I said, early process, and we get back to you with more reflection and thinking on this topic. Eric, anything else you want to add?
No, but if that's keeping it short at 12 minutes, I don't want to see going long. We got a lot to report on.
Okay, so that's it for planning.
Okay, thank you, Bertrand. Personnel, John, anything you want to cover?
No, I don't think we had a meeting since the last board meeting.
Okay, and finally on communications, our last meeting was in July. We discussed the fire safe program and getting that started. We discussed needs for communications on both renewables and the electric rates, and those will be topics for discussion at our next meeting.
No,
yes?
I'm a bit confused on personnel. I thought there was a meeting actually. So I mean,
It only had one topic on it though. or I had two topics. One was the job description for the new electric propane supervisor, and the second was the COVID bonuses, as I recall.
No, that's true. Yep.
Yeah. So actually, I was delighted to see that description of the position. I think in this time where we want to electrify, it is essential that we beef up. We are getting more experience and qualification. I mean, it'd be so cool to have an engineer of electricity engineer to help us with all the electrical topics that we try to tackle. That include the EV charging stations. Actually, I wonder if we do hire someone promptly, could that person do the analysis of the capacity instead of hiring an outside consultant? So
no, there's nothing in that position description about being an electrical engineer. I'm not sure what you read, but that's not in there. We wanted a project manager, supervisor manager, someone that could do the ministerial paperwork more than anything. It was definitely not an electrical engineer.
Okay, so let me, in this case, I misread. I thought there was an engineer level that was asked for, but if it's not the case, why not? Don't we think that we need to have better expert? I mean, better is not the right word. Another level of expertise for electricity, knowing we want to maximize electrification. So. And all the EV charging stuff going on. So I was wondering why this is actually, if this is not part of the description, why is not?
This is the recommendation of staff, and this is what Brandy felt she needed in that position. We don't use an electrical engineer enough to justify hiring an electrical engineer and the rates that would encompass. But we're actually doing discussion now, so we're violating the Brown Act. So I'm going to stop there.
Yeah.
Okay. Temporary advisory committee reports. I'm not aware of any to report on there. So let's move on to general discussion. Are there any issues the board wants to raise for clarification or for future topics?
Well, on general discussion, I have several topics. Yes, if it's my time.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so the first one is, I think we should revise language in the electrical rate ordinance that we just passed. There are several areas that would benefit from clarifications. Obviously, when you see the letter that we are receiving from people, people just cannot figure out when actually their rate is going to be based on their own consumption instead of the previous owner. So I think a little clarification in the would help for that. I also think that, as mentioned by Anton at the beginning of the public comment, that we should actually tune up the way the period that I use for reference. Currently, actually, we have no language that specify what happened in Anton cases, actually. So the district took the 3 years before because he was only 20 months into his property. And nevertheless, none of his usage is going to be used. And I think that's wrong. I think there is an easy fix for that. So basically, my request is to bring this for discussion at the next board meeting. And I'd be happy to provide clarification on this language for the changes for the board to discuss and potentially move. So that's number one. Number two is, and I think we need to have a better understanding on the access on the data. And I know there are confidentiality rules that we need to follow, but database actually are pretty well designed for that. Typically, you have a different level of viewership and that can be granted. And it's important for the board member to be able to make scenarios on what's going to happen if we do specific changes. And currently, the only one I'm aware that can do that is Bob. And I think we need to open up that so other board member could actually access the data in a confidential manner so they can actually make scenarios so we can propose policies. So that's number 2. And so I'd like to have that as well as a discussion at the next topic. And there was one more thing that I just, give me 1 second. Yeah, I don't have my notes here. Well, I guess I'm just blanking here. So I guess it'd be for another meeting.
Okay. Any other board member comments?
There was one more comment. Yes, I still come. I mean, I know I've been talking about that several times, and I still think we need to have data for the meeting in either in a progressive fashion, but typically we get between 100 and several hundred page document to look at within 48 hours of the board meeting. And I think it's difficult to do a diligent oversight and with such a short time frame for such a big package. So I think we need to devise a system where the data is provided earlier, either in a granular fashion to the board member at least, or I don't know. I think I just cannot check everything I would like to check in the short amount of time. We need to have information sooner, I think, for the board meeting. If we have to delay by 30 days, about a month, because data was not ready in time, it's okay. I mean, there are emergency situations that we need to deal with, but other stuff, not everything is emergency situation. So I'm asking again for having more time to be able to look at this huge packet you are receiving every month.
Okay. Any other general discussion? Hearing none, then I'd like to adjourn the meeting, and we'll see you all on October 9th, and hopefully actually get to see Kirkwood sometime soon. Thank you all for your time today.